It's time to start testing our high ability students on the COGAT. And to start getting ready for that, before we begin testing, it is best to start creating test session groups. As a reminder, remember that you can only test one grade level at a time. We cannot have two grade level sessions going at different times because you can only be logged into one test at a time. So in order to do this, you have to create a test session for each grade level. So begin by clicking the blue button that says Proctor an online test session for this test event. So I click on it and it's going to take me to a new screen. Within this new screen, I have a drop-down boxes where I can create my test sessions. So this will have two options. It will either say pre-test or post-test. As a reminder, we must give the pre-test, all three of them, before we move on to the post-test. The three pre-tests are the verbal, the quantitative, and the non-verbal tests. Each one of those lasts about 10 minutes. So to create those, I click on the test that I want to give, I click on the grade level, and then these will pre-populate for you. And then you have to decide, do you want your students to do the getting started? Please note that the getting started is a test example. It does not count towards the student's score. It does not hurt the students. It does not help the students. It is just a session where the students can practice what they will be doing. So you as an administrator can decide if you want your students to take this as an example or not. If you want them to take it, go ahead and click Getting Started, and that will be the first test that you have the students give. If not, you will click Verbal as the very first test that does count toward the student's score. The best way to identify your score, since all of our tests will appear together, is to identify it by school, identify it by which test it is. Is it the post-test? Is it the pre-test? And then I like to identify it by which test it is. So this is the verbal. And then I like to give it a number. And this is test number 1. So that I know the order completion to go in. So I'm going to go ahead and create test. I'm going to do this for each grade level that I have and go through and create a first testing for all of my grade levels. And then I'll just go ahead, call this first. So I know it's first grade, post, verbal, 1. And I will do the exact same thing, call it ASC, second grade, post, verbal, 1. And keep doing that all the way through K through 7th grade. Once I've created all my sessions for the first test, I have to decide if I'm testing all the students in one sitting or if I'm going to test them in different sittings. If I'm going to test them in different sittings, then I need to create other test sessions for them. So I would go in and I would create another test session for another test. So if I want to if I know I'm going to test the kindergarten students doing the verbal and the two verbals at the same time, I'm going to go create one for the quantitative. I'm going to click quantitative. I'm going to go in here, call it ASC, kindergarten, quantitative, post, quan, and it is test number 3, so that I know that. And then I will go through and start creating tests for this. This way, when I go back to find my test, I can easily locate them at the bottom. All my tests are right here, and I will be able to identify them based on what grade level, what test it is, and what number it falls in the testing order. This is the way that you can set up your test sessions. Now, if I know that I'm going to just test the students one test after another, I do not have to create all these individualized tests. I can continue and just create the first test, which is ASC First Post Verbal 1. And when the students are testing, I can link the tests together and just hit continue testing each time that they finish with one round of testing. I can just continually keep going through this, and I do not have to create a test session for each one of those tests if I link the tests together. But if I'm only going to test the students for 2 tests, and I click End Testing, and I'm sending the students back to their classroom, then for the next test that I start with those students, I need to go back in here and I need to create a new test session for those students. So I just finished testing the 2 quantitative, and they had enough of that and they didn't take the nonverbal. So now I'm going to create a test for the nonverbal so that when they come back, I can give the nonverbal test to them. They will be ready to go. Nonverbal, and this is test number 4, so I know that they're ready to go. So create sessions based on your testing schedule. You can create one for each selected battery or subtest, or you can just link them together by hitting continue testing all as they finish one test and go into another. Reminder, only one grade level can be tested at a time because only one test session can be opened at a time.